Before we begin today, I have a brief announcement. As with the closed trial 10 years ago, some astonishing facts have come to light in these proceedings. The revelation that the well-known Reaper is actually an organization illegally executing its own brand of justice. And the discovery that a respectful yard inspector was at its heart until he himself perished in an assassination plot. Well, I say to all members of the judiciary here present on this occasion that we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Counsels, you will undertake this trial with the resolve to pursue the truth to the bitter end. Resolve, yes, that's my intention. My lord, if I may inquire, the defendant may speak. On what grounds is Kazuma Asugi permitted to continue in his role as prosecutor? He has admitted to colluding with the victim in a plot to assassinate an innocent man. He shouldn't be enjoying the privilege of freedom, let alone be leading the prosecution. I submitted a written petition to Lord Strongheart, requesting that judgment of my transgressions be delayed by 1 day. You did what? In today's proceedings, I intend to expose everything. My whole life for the last 10 years has all been leading up to this 1 day. Kazuma. Whatever the outcome of this trial, I give my word that I will accept whatever punishment is deemed appropriate, however severe. And I suggest you prepare yourself for the same, Reaper. Kazuma is bristling with hostility today. I get the distinct impression we're heading into a very dangerous territory. Is that really even Kazuma-sama standing before us? As an extreme exception to normal practices, I have granted this prosecutor's request. The defense finds this acceptable, I presume. Well, I don't, but let's see what Ryunosuke thinks. Yes, my lord. In that case, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the closed hearing of Barak van Zieks. The defense is ready, my lord. The prosecution is more than ready. Very well, then. The preamble has taken long enough. Prosecutor Asugi, begin! As you wish, my lord. The prosecution calls the first witness to the stand. Bring Seisho Jigoku into the courtroom! At last, then, we've reached the final battle. He's putting literally everything on the line now in order to get to the truth. Come on, Ryunosuke. It's time for that steely resolve, because this is going to test it to the limit. Witness, state your name and occupation for the court. Ha! So it was you who issued this, was it? Your subpoena? I did what was necessary. Ha 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 ha! Well, look at what the young man has become. I didn't think I'd see the day when you take that toe with me, I must say. The witness will ensure his responses are pertinent to the questions asked. My name is Seisho Jigoku, a Supreme Court judge from the Empire of Japan. 16 years ago, this man came to London as a visiting student. 6 years later, he returned to Japan. As well as presiding over the Supreme Court, he is also currently Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. I am of course fully aware of Mr. Jigoku and his preeminent roles. I invited him personally to the International Forensic Science Symposium as a representative of his country. I hear he also played a key role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation. Ha ha! It was a great honor to be involved in negotiations. I put my all into that treaty. Judge Jigoku, I must ask. Well, I never fancy the young murdering student turning up here of all places. Dude, not the time! You acquitted me yourself, and now I'm a practicing defense lawyer. Yes, and full of self-importance like your friend across the courtroom, I see. You came here to London by invitation to the International Forensic Science Symposium. But then, without informing anyone of your plans, you took flight to France. Took flight? I'd have to object to that turn of phrase. Then explain yourself. What exactly were the circumstances? Well, I was somewhat expecting this, and I'm sorry to say, I decline to comment. Why? What? Leaving the country prematurely when I was an invited guest may be questionable etiquette. But my decision is unrelated to this case. I can't be bound to testify. Unrelated, you say? I appreciate that a respected police inspector has been killed, for which I offer my condolences. However, being an alien, I'd obviously never met the man, nor do I know the first thing about him. As such, I'm in no position to testify. It's as simple as that. So you would run from all this? I beg your pardon? This case is far more reaching than the murder of Inspector Gregson. It has ties to another murder, a case that was tried in Japan almost a year ago now. A year ago in Japan? The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson, you mean? That's right! And you, Judge Jigoku, are at the heart of both cases. The defense has evidence to prove it. Well, Ryunosuke, I see from the look in your eyes that you're resolved to carry this through to the very end, too. Let's see your evidence, then. What proof do you have that Seisho Jigoku is involved in this case? Well, obviously, as we established yesterday, from the myriad of bits of pieces of paper that I have scattered in my pocket, the telegram from Japan.
Take that!
This is a telegram detailing a communication sent between Britain and Japan approximately 1 year ago. The communication contained 4 names: K. Asagi, Ace Shin, T. Gregson, and J. Wilson. You little... Where did you get that? In Tokyo. From your office, Judge Jigoku. What? How on earth did you... What's this all about? Why is my name on that list? This list of 4 names follows a certain pattern. T. Gregson and J. Wilson are the names of victims. K. Asagi and Ace Shin are the names of assassins. No! A year ago in Tokyo, Dr. John H. Wilson's life was taken in a Western-style restaurant in the capital. The culprit was found to be a visiting student who went by the name of Giselle Brett. But her real name was Assassin, a professional killer sent on a mission to kill from Great Britain. A. Shin and her victim, J. Wilson. And the murder that just took place here in London was the counterpart to that crime. An assassin sent from Japan, also a visiting student, Kasuma Asugi, whose victim was the British police inspector, Tobias Gregson. K. Asugi and T. Gregson. One assassin from each country to kill a target residing in the other. What exactly is the defense suggesting? These two cases of murder, one that took place in Britain and one in Japan, were masterminded by a pair of individuals from each country as a form of assassin exchange. I cannot say assassin. I always keep adding an H. I'm sorry about that. Probably because of assassin. And the telegram the defense has acquired is proof of this international contract to kill. What? What? The telegram was found in your office, Judge Jigoku. In other words, the mastermind in Japan was you. Judge Jigoku? What's this all about? And you, Kazuma, you lied. During yesterday's proceedings, you acknowledged that you'd accepted the assassination mission. But the mark wasn't Judge Jigoku at all. It was T. Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard, as shown by the name on the killing contract. Very impressive, Ryunosuke. But actually, I didn't lie. The name of the target I was ordered to kill never passed my lips yesterday. The idea that Seisho Jigoku was the mark came entirely from you! Ah! You deliberately avoided saying a name? The defense claims these four names indicate some sort of international assassin exchange. I keep saying it wrong. I'm sure I speak for all present when I say that the very idea seems utterly absurd. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what do you have to say for yourself? His silence only goes to prove his guilt. There's another very important point that this new development brings to light. There is now a distinct possibility that the scene of Inspector Gregson's actual murder was in the witness's cabin aboard the SS Groose. Judge Jigoku, you have to testify now. To refuse would put you in contempt of court. Ha 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 ha! There's no need for quite such a vicious stare, young man. Very well then. As a parting gift to you all, I'll tell you everything I know. It seems this Japanese gentleman has information that the court must hear about the alleged assassin exchange and the events of the night of the 31st October. Present your formal testimony now. As you wish, my lord. It's true that Kazuma Aosuki was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. The target was Inspector T. Gregson. That was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. If there had been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved. So you admit it then, as this communication suggests, there really was an assassin exchange arrangement between Britain and Japan. A political endeavor at the highest levels, not something I can discuss here. To use such a worthy practice as foreign study to coerce somebody to commit murder, it's the most appalling thing I've ever heard. Appalling? Well, it's easy to judge. Pardon? Aosuki had a reason for taking his sword to that British inspector, you know. What? Which is why he accepted the mission in the first place. Isn't that right, counsel? Kazuma-sama. Judge Jigoku, if you are the mastermind behind this operation in Japan, then tell the court the identity of your counterpart in Britain. I'm not obliged to divulge the information. Yes, you are! As I said yesterday, I've killed nobody. I freely admit that I accepted the mission, but on the night the plan was to be executed, I backed out. In short, this assassin exchange that the defense has identified is unrelated to the events of this case. The crucial point is this. Your police inspector can't have perished aboard that steamship in Dunkirk. Because if he had been shot in the cabin, it's inconceivable that a member of the crew wouldn't have heard it. That's right. Gregson was killed after returning to London, in the room on Fresno Street. And the perpetrator of the crime was the Reaper, Barak van Zieks. The prosecution's accusation remains unchanged. To think that a seemingly innocent foreign exchange program was a facade for such Machiavellian dealings. I didn't think I'd be saying that word today. Clearly, it's a plot only a government minister and high-ranking judge such as the witness could hope to execute. Well, I seem to recall there was someone on the British side who controlled everything. Be that as it may, it is not the place of this court to pursue this villainous assassin exchange plot. We are concerned only with the tangible events pertaining to the murder of Inspector Gregson. Is the defense clear on that point, counsel? Yes, my lord. I'll keep that in mind as I cross-examine the witness. Okay, so he said on the evening question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. That is not true. Because there was an evacuation drill, so technically he couldn't have been outside his cabin at all times, because at some point, he had to have left.
Objection!
Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. However, we can be sure that, contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times. What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st. What? Where did you get that? From your room. It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember. Herlock Sholmes again. According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 10 p.m. and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grus were to gather on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their posts? And during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. In summary, Judge Jigoku, you had ample opportunity to commit the crime. Ah!
Objection!
A 20-minute window of opportunity. That's an excellent find, Ryunosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Oh, so because he said he didn't commit the crime, that means he didn't commit the crime. Okay, well then Barak van Zieks didn't commit the crime. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be false. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel? Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Because the defense has the evidence to prove it. You will present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Jigoku's cabin on the 31st of October? Okay, so before we continue on, I want to examine this small component that we found in Jigoku's cabin. You see these little things all over the place, don't you? It's the part on the top of a pocket watch that you twist to set the time, isn't it? It's called the crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one. The crown? Like what sits on top of a monarch's head? That's a very grand name for such a tiny part. But actually, yes, Mr. Naruto. If this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here somewhere with a very bare head. If by monarch you mean pocket watch, then I'm quite sure you have. Alright, so we've checked that. Now we need to check the top of the watch. What do you think, Mrs. Zato? I feel sure I know exactly what will fit here. Really? I was just thinking precisely the same thing. We're about to see that little rounded component is actually part of Inspector Gregson's broken pocket watch. Really? I was just thinking precisely that too. A perfect fit. I knew it. All right, perhaps you knew it. I'll make a note of this new information at once. The details of the small component have been updated in the court record. It's now clear that it's the missing crown of Inspector Gregson's pocket watch. Okay, so now that we have done that...
Take that!
Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday. What is that? The crown of a pocket watch? A pocket watch? And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part. It can't be. Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill. In the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jigoku! Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you, you young murderer? Still acquitted.
Objection!
Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. And your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. But rather like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? And I believe Judge Jigoku feels the same way. I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year. You set up the assassination that caused me to get... I hate you right now. I don't want to hate you because you seem like a nice guy, but you set up two people to die. Sorry? If I'd known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel, I would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast. I think it's clear that the witness will have to give further testimony. When you hear what actually happened in my cabin that night, you'll notice the pitfall into which you stumbled. Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of Victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume. Yes, I do. Very well then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st October. Of course. As a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with an ippon sei throw, though. He couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. Ippon seoi? A common jiu-jitsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use it too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there. Ah! I've no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger. Yes, because he was merely a tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have no involvement in the case. Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination. Sorry, my lord, the defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that. You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, you not knowing when you're beaten. Well, that's just me. That's just not a nice thing to say. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo. Okay, it's always like these statements that usually warrant pressing because it's such a bold claim with what is supposedly no understanding of what's going on. So,
Hold it!
But there's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive. Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, stripling. What? If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have got back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at that same spot. It's a devil of a thing. Well, then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body. How exactly? Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think? Well, yes, that's true, but all passenger luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels. And I would like to think the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. Ugh, that killed the idea then. But perhaps not. Miss Suzato? We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posed to guard them. Which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I had been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony, with your consent, of course, my lord. I have no objection. State your intended testimony now. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. Ah, wait a second. If we take a look at this commemorative photograph, you'll notice a gigantic briefcase. He technically could have.
Objection!
There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say. I would say the opposite is true. And what's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do. The transport of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Ryunosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London. Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took rather a lot of time. I must say, I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? Ha! I knew you were jealous. Ha 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 ha! I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku? It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting... I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us, inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. Order, order, order in the court! I'm skeptical, counsel, that a grown man's body could fit even in the largest travel trunk. It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? But inside his trunk? How horrifying! And after we'd spoke with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street, taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body. I don't have to listen to this nonsense! Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged that there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. Yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they're certainly found is on a large ocean liner. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh for their long sea voyages. And the SS Cruise is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku? However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer. Ha 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 ha. Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asugi and you embark on this study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already. Judge Jigoku, please, stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond? Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there? Why ever not? Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical. The actual scene of the crime, the prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Barrick Van Zieks shot the victim at point-blank range. Can you just piss off for 5 minutes? Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim. That's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Easily. Quite simply. Because the claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. So if we look back at the photograph of the victim, you'll notice the position that Gregson was in. Like, he's curled up. Kind of the same way that Judge Jigoku was curled up in his trunk. So...
Take that!
A photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed? Yes! But the point is the posture of the body itself. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal.
Objection!
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku, but it's your logic that is flawed. What? According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position. Ah! Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now. You're suggesting... The inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor, from the inside of a large travel trunk. No! You're quite right. The shape of the body. It looks exactly as if it had been kept in a confined space. Judge Jigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Ah! Present my trunk? I refuse. What? On what grounds? I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some stripling's baseless accusations. We have photographic evidence! In other words, Judge Jigoku, there is blood in your trunk. I decline to answer that. As a Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privileges that allow me to... At this moment, you're not a government minister. You are a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be. You will not withhold information. Nothing is more important than the truth. Order in the court. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be? You can't be serious! You did it?! Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Asugi? What? Very well. I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense. What? You... Dear God! Outrageous! So it was you! You admit that... No! I admit to nothing more than what I've said. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So, I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else. You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man? As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life. Oh! That's right! Who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asugi! You... I never thought you'd stoop to this, Seishiro Jigoku. You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, Prosecutor Kazuma Asugi. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you? Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question. Yes, on an assassination mission, no less. You wouldn't... So, what do you make of that, young stripling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more. I don't believe this. Counsel for the defense? What is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was, in fact, Mr. Kazuma Asugi. This isn't the dead end it seems to be. The answer's right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well, the defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asugi is... It's impossible. Asugi would never do it. I can't see him doing it. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claimed that logical reasoning is the future of judicial process. It is, no question. Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asugi to commit the crime. What? The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So, present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asugi's involvement? The evacuation drill itinerary proves it.
Take that!
This itinerary for crew members of the SS Cruise, my lord. This is conclusive proof. An itinerary? How does that prove anything? Judge Jigoku, the moment you acknowledged that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant. What? Why? On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Absolutely. because it's inconceivable that the guard would have heard it and wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock as indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Now, clearly the murder could only be committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. But Prosecutor Oski stated in yesterday's proceedings, I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life. So I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent that night at a boarding house in town and returned to England the following morning. Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof that Kazuma Oski couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. Ah! No, absolutely not. I don't accept that at all. What do you mean? The boy's just saying that to exonerate himself. We can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and finish the... No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. And as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations register book. All extremely easy to verify, and undeniable proof. No, There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer as a common man. He's gonna break the witness stand again. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it, Seishiro Jigoku? It was that damn trial 10 years ago. That's when all this began. Looking back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. My controller's vibrating. Ah! Oh my god, he broke it again. Oh my god! It's over! My life is over! A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan. A Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that, you decided to recruit Mr. Asagi. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain. And you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement. Because I was already on my way to Britain at that time in Kazuma's place. And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation. To eliminate the mark myself, personally. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume? That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain. So I enlisted the help of my British counterpart. And made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper. What? The Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself. So that means that the assassin exchange was all planned by the Reaper. I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship. But it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and his own death. Oh, how awful. It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time, waiting. For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock, I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came around and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received a British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it? Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Gruce. Which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street. The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you can seal the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Grakes' intended schedule. Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon. In order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit. So I took a hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. That must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. Miss Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then. So I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. What sort of disguise? For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece in his own traveling case. So I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself in that than I would have otherwise. The hairpiece we found at the scene, the inspector had it ready for the Red-Headed League investigation. I only arrived at the room at around 4:45. So I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board, and set up my little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang at around 15 minutes later. So that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except, at the last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagined that it was the bag of fish and chips. I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but... well, It seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sordid details of what I did. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. An exchange of assassins? What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us! Enough! I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though, as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Alright, that's really cool. Seisho Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found. Interesting, we've never actually seen the guilty sign before. And I may remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond a doubt. Oh, wonderful! Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. Is something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange. We do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in his trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor. As you wish. Now, for the formal education. I hereby declare the defendant, Barrick Van Zieks.
Objection!
The prosecution calls for an education to be deferred. Counsel? The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all. And therefore, it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. What? But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Nevertheless, Barrick Van Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Asugi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Seisho Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot. Into the sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is, who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly, that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barak van Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. What? Order! The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku and by the Reaper himself. Which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitively the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well, whilst it's extremely irregular. I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he has had with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. God bless, really? You didn't at least adjust the scales or something? Thank you. Pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verify that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hollow chalice. Are you still allowed to have those? Lord Van Zieks! I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now. And ever since that time, I've endured the weight of implied guilt that gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous. And Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically. You're right that he's not himself. But I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise. As a lawyer, and as his friend. Then that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well. Defendant, you will take the witness stand. and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. I'm still not saying it right. As you wish, my lord. We are still going, man! This train just don't stop! I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Wait, what? Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution? Yes! Both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey, and that you masterminded the assassin exchange? I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo? Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? A carriage? A desire to uncover the truth? Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty? From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. But Judge, dilatory chatter is like a third of this entire game. Why are you denying us that? Ah, yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you are convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. Okay, so the point is no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. That is not entirely true. And I really hate to do this, but that's not true. Because, Clint's autopsy report technically connects all three parties.
Objection!
What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old, from the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks. What? My brother's autopsy report? I'm pleased to see the defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in the court! What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? This, the autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an undeniable link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again! The professor. I've personally researched all the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zieks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead, Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asagi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zieks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death. That's outrageous! And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. That makes sense. Order at once! 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost! You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash! You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence. And he acknowledged what I'd already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret! While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Kadama, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're the Asagi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing, is it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth. That's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? It was for the good of the country. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak! I'm not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it. That's right. Even then. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the results of Clint Van Zieks' autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barrick Van Zieks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly. And as we established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. So, it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barrick Van Zieks.
Objection!
Kazuma Asugi. What? What you've just told the court? Are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission. In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper. What? Lord Van Zieks? I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one! If Lord Van Zieks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... Well, it was Strongheart, because he was supposed to be the original prosecutor for the case. I told you, I knew it from the start. I knew he was going to be the final boss.
Take that!
Let's go! Only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mail Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago, the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court. But he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zieks, had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zieks? 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now. I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was some wrongdoing in Lord Clint Van Zieks' autopsy? That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where's your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now, unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say... I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Ugh! Get back down quick. Order! Order in the court! Following Inspector Gregson's murder, and in light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections? Kazuma, he's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down and pursue the truth about what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. There is someone. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Scythe won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope.
Objection!
Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who, Ryunosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please, this trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks is... Mikotoba, because Dr. Wilson only signed the reports. He didn't actually make them. Eugene was the one who actually made the reports, so he could testify about it.
Take that!
Heaven help us, another Japanese. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord, Professor Eugene Mikotoba, 16 years ago. He came to London with Seisho Jigoku and Genshin Asugi as a visiting student. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense's demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikotomo is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongar has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's so concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asagi, let me refresh your memory, as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and the mastermind of the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So, present your evidence for those claims and make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence. But that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asagi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. What the f*** is wrong with you? That's so cruel. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by the Japanese Supreme Court Judge Judge Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities.
Objection!
But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me? Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asagi, you will be remanded the following proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. Ugh. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asagi. Oh. Ugh. That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Yes! Mr. Sholmes! This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public? You will leave the courtroom at once.
Objection!
Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Judge Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Mayor Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of this trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along at the provocations of your superiors? Order! Order in the court! It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices, a door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors in the gallery have no right to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence! He's right. The judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to end, it must end. But will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. What? What? The trial should go on! Summon the witness! That's right! We need to clear this up before the young Japanese fellows remain in custody! My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here! Vindicate yourself of this outlandish accusation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth! That's the very foundation of British law! A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. On with the trial! On with the trial! Well, my lord, you hear the voice of British justice, I take it. I think you'll find it will be rather awkward to silence. The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo! Ah, yes? I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you? Absolutely. It's still in my pocket. She sends her regards and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. Oh, of course. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. Herlock Sholmes, you madman! So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under.